Hi, I'm Beat Nussbaumer from macrobeat.co.uk. A rather quiet week this week, despite having the ECB meeting on Wednesday, having the Fed minutes on Wednesday night. But really, there hasn't been really much new. We didn't really expect much new, given the ECB's sort of shift towards a more dovish side on the previous meeting. And given the sort of time of year, it probably makes sense for them to just buy themselves some time and really look whether or not the data starts to sort of bottom out or even start to recover. The ECB minutes that we've seen that a few days before and did actually show that the ECB members are still pretty comfortable that the dip we see in growth is temporary and that we might see sort of move towards normalizing growth later in the year. So that being said, we had a rather dull week in foreign exchange as well in the rest of the market, and I would love to sort of talk about the IMF review a little bit more in detail. So in the first slide, we see that the IMF has cut growth for the third time in just under 6 months to 3.3% from 3.5%. So funny enough, this is really at a time when data started to turn slightly better. We've seen better PMI data in China that sort of would point out to somewhat of some green shoots in China. At the same time, we've seen somewhat more stable data coming out of Europe and elsewhere. So it's a very strange time for them to really notch growth outlook down yet again, and even warn that the Chinese growth could surprise to the downside. On the next slide, we do see the GDP per countries. We see some of the standouts, with Germany dropping into negative territory. Italy is obviously the big worry in Europe, given the debt burden that Italy has, and just seems to be unable to put any sort of performance in on the growth side. Canada is the other one that starts to slip into negative territory. That isn't obviously yet recession territory, given we didn't really had negative GDPs for a consecutive time. On the next slide, we just see the sort of global stocks index, which just started to have a little bit of a hiccup after the downward revision of growth from the IMF. Obviously, the market is the first time the market probably realized the difference between having weak data, weak global growth outlook, and equities that actually just ignored every sort of set of data altogether. So we had a bit of a hiccup at that point in time. What the market has since sort of balanced itself out and take it in its stride. On the next slide, we have the Dow. The Dow keeps on hovering around these sort of key areas from end of last year, the top of early this year. We sort of broken above that area, but in the meantime have sort of dropped back below. So we seem to be on a sort of area that is going to be very crucial for the foreseeable future, at least for the next few weeks, maybe even a few months. Going into earnings season, there is some risk that people see that we have maybe the first time that the earnings seasons could be bringing some negative data, which obviously would be the first time that the stock market is really going to be challenged with, negative news that is directly coming from the equity market. Now that the equity market has really completely ignored any sort of weaker data around the world, pinning their hopes all on the central banks, that the central banks will take care of the stock market by cutting rates or being dovish, should that be necessary. The last slide I have for you is a Chinese stock market. There obviously we see completely a sort of different picture with a massive rally in 2019. Now getting to the sort of Fibonacci areas at the 76.4, which is really the time when the stock market has to show what it's made of, whether we can really go the distance or whether we start to tail off here going into the sort of next quarter. This is it in terms of the charts I wanted to show. So clearly we go into the sort of holiday period with the Easter break coming up. Volatility will be dropping. So it's really hard to see whether volatility has a chance to increase now that it's been very low in the previous few weeks. So this is it from me, Beat Nussbaumer from macrobeat.co.uk. I wish you a lovely weekend. Thank you. Bye-bye.